The arrival on Orestra. The starship Elysium drifted through the blackness of space, its engines humming as it neared the distant planet of Orestra. Captain Lena Voss stood at the bridge's observation deck, arms crossed, her expression a blend of determination and worry. She had led her crew through some of the most dangerous regions of space, but nothing could have prepared them for what awaited on Orestra. The planet had recently been discovered by human explorers, its atmosphere perfect for life. Yet there was one problem. The Zorax, a technologically superior alien species, had already claimed the planet as their own. Tensions between the two species had reached a boiling point. Every encounter with the Zorax seemed to end in conflict, with the aliens dismissing humanity as inferior beings who had no place in their galaxy. Lena wasn't one to back down from a challenge. "We have a mission to complete," she told her crew. "No one is going to tell us where we can or cannot go." Her first officer, Elias Tran, stood beside her, scanning the incoming transmission from the Zorax. "They've issued a final warning," he muttered, his brow furrowing. "If we step onto their territory, they'll respond with force." Lena smirked. "Let them try. We didn't travel across light years to turn back now." The shuttle touched down on Orestra's surface with a low hiss, dispersing dust and strange spores into the air. The crew exited cautiously, their boots crunching on alien soil. The landscape was otherworldly, a blend of thick forests, bioluminescent plants, and glowing rivers that snaked across the land like veins. Despite the beauty around them, there was an unspoken tension in the air. The Zorax were watching. Lena activated her comm device, giving orders to establish their outpost. "We build fast and efficiently. We need defenses up before nightfall." Just as her team began setting up equipment, a group of Zorax warriors appeared from the forest, their tall, insect-like forms glimmering under the alien sun. Their leader, Varys, stepped forward with a sneer, her mandibles clicking. "You were warned, human," she hissed in perfect English. "Leave or be destroyed." Lena met the alien's gaze without flinching. "We're here to stay. We'll defend ourselves if necessary, but we came in peace. This planet has enough space for both of us." Varys clicked in amusement. "Your species, so young, so foolish. Do you really believe you can stand against us?" Lena's jaw tightened, but she remained calm. "We've survived worse. We're not leaving." The Zorax leader gave a mocking laugh. "Then you will burn in the fires of your own arrogance." Without another word, the alien group vanished into the forest, leaving Lena and her team behind. As the sun began to set over Orestra's horizon, the humans worked tirelessly to finish their outpost. But they all knew the Zorax would return. And when they did, it wouldn't be for a friendly chat. In the next part, we will see how humanity's resilience is tested and how the crew uses their creativity and determination to outmaneuver the Zorax. First contact turns to conflict. The night on Orestra was unlike anything the crew had ever experienced. Beneath the twin moons, the air shimmered with bioluminescent spores, casting a surreal glow over the outpost. Despite the planet's beauty, tension hung in the air like a coiled spring. Captain Lena Voss knew the Zorax would strike soon. "Stay sharp, people," Lena ordered as she patrolled the perimeter. Her team worked in silence, fortifying the barriers and setting up automated defenses. Every strange sound from the forest sent shivers down their spines. They were intruders on alien soil, and the Zorax would make sure they didn't forget it. Elias Tran stood by her side, scanning the tree line with his rifle in hand. "They're watching us, Lena. I can feel it." She nodded, her eyes never leaving the horizon. "Let them watch. We've got a mission to complete, and we won't give them the satisfaction of seeing us scared." Suddenly, their comm units buzzed with static. "Captain, we've got movement," reported Sarah Kim, their communications officer, from the central control hub. "South perimeter, multiple contacts." Before Lena could respond, shimmering figures began to emerge from the forest. The Zorax warriors materialized in eerie silence, their armor reflecting the faint glow of the alien spores. They stood in formation, weapons drawn but not yet firing. Varys, the Zorax leader, stepped forward once more. Her mandibles clicked with displeasure as her yellow, slitted eyes locked onto Lena. "Foolish humans," she hissed. "This is your final warning. Leave now or face annihilation." Lena held her ground. "We're not here for a fight, but we won't be bullied. If you're looking for a war, you'll get one." Varys tilted her head, her antennae twitching in amusement. "You overestimate yourselves, human. You are nothing but ants beneath our feet." Without another word, Varys raised her hand, and a loud hum filled the air. The Zorax warriors raised strange, energy-based weapons that crackled with blue lightning. "Defensive positions," Lena shouted. "The battle begins." The Zorax attacked in a flash, their weapons discharging beams of energy that sliced through trees and melted rock. Lena's team scrambled into position, returning fire with plasma rifles and turret defenses. Explosions rocked the outpost as the night erupted into chaos. Sarah's voice crackled over the comms. "Turret 1 is down. They're overwhelming us. Hold your ground." Lena barked, ducking behind cover as a beam scorched the air where she had been standing. She fired back, striking one of the aliens in the chest. The Zorax warrior collapsed, but two more took its place almost instantly. Elias cursed as he reloaded. "These guys are relentless. We won't last long at this rate." Lena's mind raced, calculating their next move. The Zorax were faster and more advanced, but humans had something their enemies underestimated: adaptability. They couldn't win with brute force, but they could outthink their opponents. "Elias, pull the crew back to the main hub," Lena ordered. "We need to force them into a choke point. If we can't match their firepower, we'll funnel them where they have no room to maneuver." Elias gave her a grim nod and relayed the orders. The team retreated into the central structure, barricading the entrances and setting traps along the way. Turning the tide. As the Zorax pursued, their confidence grew. They pushed forward, firing relentlessly, but Lena's plan was working. Inside the narrow corridors of the hub, the Zorax struggled to maintain their formation. "Now," Lena shouted. The crew detonated explosive charges, collapsing parts of the structure behind the advancing aliens. Several Zorax warriors were caught in the blast, their armor scorched and cracked. In the confusion, Lena and her team launched a counterattack. Plasma fire filled the cramped space, forcing the Zorax into disarray. The humans fought with a ferocity born not just from survival, but from defiance. Elias grinned as he landed a clean shot. They weren't expecting this kind of fight. Lena smirked, adrenaline surging through her. That's the thing about humans. We're full of surprises. Varys, however, was not easily deterred. She rallied her remaining warriors, her anger palpable. "Enough of this," she roared. "Crush them." The Zorax charged once more, but the humans held their ground. Sarah rerouted power to the defensive systems, activating the remaining turrets just in time. Beams of energy tore through the alien ranks, forcing them to retreat. As the dust settled, the Zorax warriors fell back into the forest, disappearing as quickly as they had come. Varys stood at the edge of the tree line, her eyes burning with fury as she stared at Lena one last time. "This isn't over, human," she hissed before vanishing into the night. Aftermath and preparation. The battlefield fell silent except for the crackle of damaged electronics and the distant sounds of alien wildlife. The humans had survived, but it was clear this was only the beginning. Elias wiped the sweat from his brow, leaning against a crate. "Well, that could have gone worse." Lena allowed herself a small smile. "We gave them something to think about, that's for sure." Sarah's voice chimed in over the comms. "Captain, we're detecting movement deeper in the forest. I think they're regrouping." Lena's smile faded. "We don't have much time. Start repairs immediately. If they come back, we need to be ready." As the crew began their work, Lena stood at the edge of the outpost, staring into the forest where the Zorax had vanished. The fight had been brutal, but it was far from over. She knew the Zorax would return, stronger and angrier than before. But humans had faced impossible odds before, and won. They would do it again. Lena turned back to her crew, her voice steady. "We've got a long night ahead of us. Let's show them what we're made of." A fragile alliance in the making. The aftermath of the skirmish left the outpost in shambles, but the humans stood unbowed. Repairs were underway, with sparks flying from welding tools and drones buzzing around, patching damaged systems. Every crew member moved with purpose, exhaustion pushed aside by the knowledge that the Zorax could return at any moment. Captain Lena Voss watched her team work, but her mind remained restless. It wasn't just the imminent threat of another attack. There was something else. The Zorax had the advantage. They could have overwhelmed the humans if they wanted, but Varys had pulled back. Why? "Captain," Elias said, walking over with a grim expression. "Our sensors are picking up something strange." Lena turned to the comms display. A faint signal flickered. A weak distress beacon, just beyond the forest's edge. Sarah's voice crackled over the comms. "It's not one of ours, but it's not far. And Captain, it's coming from Zorax territory." Elias raised a brow. "Think it's a trap?" Lena considered the possibility. It could easily be bait to lure them into another ambush. But something gnawed at her instincts, a gut feeling that this beacon was more than a ploy. "We can't afford to ignore it," Lena decided. "If the Zorax are dealing with their own problem, this could give us leverage." Into the unknown. Lena assembled a small team. Herself, Elias, and Sarah. They moved silently through the alien forest, guided by the faint signal. Every step deeper into the wild was fraught with tension. The bioluminescent flora pulsed gently with light, giving the forest an otherworldly glow, but the crew remained focused, weapons at the ready. After an hour of trekking, they found the source of the signal, a downed Zorax transport, half buried in the dirt, its hull scarred by plasma burns. The remnants of a battle surrounded the wreck, with alien bodies, both Zorax and unfamiliar creatures, scattered across the clearing. Lena knelt by one of the fallen Zorax, inspecting its wounds. "These weren't caused by us," she muttered. "Something else attacked them." Elias scanned the area. Whatever it was, it tore through them like paper. "Look at those claw marks." A faint groan interrupted their inspection. Beneath the wreck's debris, a Zorax warrior stirred, barely alive, pinned by a collapsed beam. It was Varys. Sarah raised her weapon instinctively, but Lena held up a hand. "Wait." Varys's eyes flickered open, filled with hatred and pain. Her mandibles twitched as she struggled to move, but the injuries were severe. "You should have left," Varys rasped, her voice weak but laced with defiance. Lena knelt beside her, pulling out a medkit. "We don't leave people to die, not even enemies." Varys tried to swat Lena's hand away, but she was too weak. "You are fools." "Maybe," Lena said as she administered a painkiller, "but we survive by being fools. Enemies or allies?" After stabilizing Varys, Lena and her team examined the wreck further. It became clear that the transport had been ambushed by a species even the Zorax weren't prepared for. "We have a choice," Elias said quietly. "We could leave her here. No one would blame us." Lena shook her head. "No, if we do that, we'll just be proving her right about us." Varys glared weakly at Lena, as if sensing her thoughts. "You gain nothing from this. Human kindness is weakness." "Maybe," Lena replied, "but it's our weakness to own." After bandaging the Zorax leader's wounds, the team fashioned a makeshift stretcher. Varys hissed in protest, but lacked the strength to stop them. Together, the humans carried her through the forest, retracing their steps toward the outpost. An unlikely truce. Back at the outpost, Varys lay in the infirmary, her breathing steady but labored. Her warriors had not returned to rescue her, and Lena suspected the Zorax would assume their leader had perished. That gave them a strange opportunity, one that could turn the tide of the conflict. Lena stood by Varys's bedside, arms crossed. "We saved your life. Now we need something in return." Varys's mandibles twitched. "What could you possibly want?" "Information," Lena said. "We need to know what attacked your transport." The Zorax leader hesitated, pride and pragmatism warring in her expression. Finally, she exhaled through her mandibles in a gesture of reluctant acceptance. "The creatures are known as the Graltek," Varys admitted. "They are hunters, relentless and merciless. Even we fear them." Lena's jaw tightened. "And they're close, aren't they?" Varys gave a slow, grim nod. "They will come for you too. You may have won the first battle against us, but if the Graltek find you, there will be no second. The enemy of my enemy." The revelation weighed heavily on Lena's mind. The Graltek were a threat far greater than the Zorax. If the humans and Zorax continued to fight, neither side would survive when the hunters arrived. Lena met Varys's gaze, her voice calm but firm. "We have a common enemy now. If we keep fighting each other, we both lose." Varys scoffed, though the effort made her wince. "You think I would ever ally with humans?" "I think you're smart enough to see the truth," Lena replied. "You don't have to like us, but you need us." The silence between them stretched, tense and heavy. Then, slowly, Varys shifted in her bed, her expression unreadable. "If I agree," Varys said slowly, "it is only until the Graltek are destroyed. After that, the war between us continues." Lena gave a small, weary smile. "I wouldn't expect anything less." Preparing for the hunt. With the fragile truce established, both sides began preparations. Zorax warriors filtered into the outpost, their distrust of the humans obvious. But Varys's orders were clear. The Graltek were the priority now. The two species worked side by side, awkwardly at first, but necessity forced cooperation. Humans shared their advanced sensors, and the Zorax provided vital intelligence on the Graltek's hunting patterns. Elias watched as a Zorax technician tinkered with one of their defense drones. "Weird, isn't it?" he said to Lena. "Us, working with them." Lena chuckled. "Yeah, but weird tends to be our thing." As night fell over the outpost, the tension grew thicker. Somewhere out there, the Graltek waited, hunting, watching, preparing to strike. But this time, the humans and Zorax would be ready. "Everyone in position," Lena ordered, her voice steady over the comms. "The hunters are coming. Let's show them what happens when enemies stand together." The hunters arrive. The stillness of the night was shattered by a bone-chilling howl that echoed across the forest. It was a sound like no other, half roar, half screech, a predatory call announcing the arrival of the Graltek. The outpost's perimeter alarms blared to life, and soldiers on both sides braced themselves. Humans gripped rifles, and Zorax warriors flexed their claws, mandibles clicking in anticipation. From the watchtower, Elias stared at the tree line, his heart pounding. Movement on the east side. He barked over the comms. "They're coming, fast." Through the trees, shadows darted with inhuman speed, barely visible against the night. Then the first wave hit. The first clash. Massive creatures, nearly 3 meters tall, burst from the forest with terrifying speed. Their sleek, scaled bodies glimmered under the moonlight, claws gleaming like blades. The Graltek moved like a pack of wolves, coordinating their assault with unnerving precision. "Hold the line," Lena shouted over the din of gunfire. The front defenses lit up as plasma turrets unleashed a hail of energy bolts, scorching the ground. The final gamble. The plan was simple and suicidal. A squad of Zorax warriors would act as bait, charging into the forest to provoke the Graltek and lead them into the trap. Behind them, human soldiers armed with explosives would cover their retreat, timing the detonation perfectly. Varys led the charge herself, her wounds forgotten in the heat of battle. The Zorax warriors roared as they tore through the forest, the Greltek hot on their heels. Drones in position. Elias called over the comms. Wait for it. Wait. The Zorax broke from the tree line just as the first Greltek breached the perimeter. Now, Lena shouted. The sky lit up as the drones detonated in unison. A wall of fire engulfed the battlefield, consuming the advancing horde in an explosion that shook the ground beneath their feet. The shockwave sent debris flying, and for a moment, all was silent. When the smoke cleared, the battlefield was littered with the charred remains of the Greltek. A handful of the creatures staggered, wounded but alive, only to be swiftly dispatched by Zorax and human fighters working in tandem. Victory. For now, the battle was over, but the cost had been high. Bodies of both humans and Zorax lay scattered across the outpost, a grim reminder of the price of survival. Lena stood among the wreckage, her rifle resting on her shoulder. Varys approached her, her armor scorched and cracked, but her stance unyielding. You fought well, Varys said, her voice rough but sincere. Lena gave a tired smile. So did you. For a moment, the two leaders stood in silence, the weight of the battle hanging between them. Then Varys spoke, her tone cautious. Our alliance is over, human. The Greltek are defeated. But, she paused, mandibles clicking thoughtfully. Perhaps, the war between us does not need to continue. Lena raised a brow. A truce. Not yet, Varys replied. But something to consider. Lena nodded, understanding the unspoken offer. Trust would take time. But for now, it was enough. The dawn of a new chapter. As the first rays of sunlight pierced the horizon, the survivors began tending to the wounded and repairing the outpost. The battle with the Greltek had left scars, but it also forged something unexpected, a fragile understanding between enemies. Elias walked over, exhaustion written on his face. So, does this mean we're friends with the Zorax now? Lena chuckled. Not quite. But it means we've earned their respect. And that's a start. Varys watched from a distance, her expression unreadable. She gave a slow nod in Lena's direction, a silent acknowledgement of what they had achieved together. The war wasn't over. But maybe, just maybe, there was a path forward that didn't end in mutual destruction. And for now, that was enough. Fragile diplomacy. In the aftermath of the battle, both human and Zorax survivors gathered in small clusters, tending to the wounded and repairing what they could. The outpost, once a battleground, was eerily silent, broken only by the occasional groan of injured soldiers or the buzz of malfunctioning equipment. Lena surveyed the camp from atop a collapsed turret. The victory had been costly, and she could sense the tension simmering beneath the surface. Old hostilities hadn't evaporated overnight, but the shared struggle against the Greltek had cracked open the door to something new, a chance to negotiate, however tentative. The Council of Two. Later that day, Lena and Varys met in the outpost's command tent, joined by their lieutenants. A table covered in battle maps and notes sat between them, a symbol of both cooperation and division. Lena leaned forward. We fought well together, but we need to decide what happens next. We can't afford another war. Not now. Varys folded her arms, her mandibles clicking thoughtfully. You speak of peace, yet your soldiers are uneasy. They still watch us as enemies. You're not wrong, Elias admitted from Lena's side. But trust takes time. Fighting the Greltek was one thing. Living alongside you is another. Varys's yellow eyes glinted. Zorax warriors do not ask for trust, only respect. We earn that much. Lena nodded slowly. Agreed. But respect isn't enough if we're going to survive what's coming next. She placed a map on the table, showing the Greltek's hunting routes. They weren't just passing through. This area is part of a migration path. There will be more. Varys growled low. Then we have little choice. We continue to fight, together. Terms of the truce. Both sides knew that an alliance, however temporary, was the only option. But diplomacy between warriors was a delicate game, especially when old grudges ran deep. The Zoraks demanded autonomy within the camp, insisting their warriors follow their own chain of command. The humans, wary of sabotage or betrayal, wanted full access to Zoraks' communications. Tensions rose as arguments flared. "We're not giving them control of our comms," Elias hissed under his breath. "They'll use it against us the first chance they get." Varys snarled at Lena. "Your people are fools if you think we would risk lives playing games. We do not betray those who fight by our side." Lena held up a hand, silencing both sides. "Enough." She thought for a moment, then offered a compromise. "We set up joint patrols. Mixed teams, Zoraks and human soldiers. No one operates alone. We share all intel openly, and if either side pulls back, the truce is over." Varys stared at her for a long moment, then gave a slow, deliberate nod. "Agreed. But know this, human. If your people break their word, there will be no second chance." Adjusting to new realities, the following days were filled with cautious cooperation. Patrols were dispatched to secure the perimeter, each team a blend of humans and Zoraks warriors. The outpost buzzed with uneasy energy, soldiers learning to fight and live alongside former enemies. The differences between them were stark. Zoraks warriors trained in silence, their discipline rigid and absolute, while humans cracked jokes to break tension. Arguments flared over tactics, cultural habits, and even food. Zoraks rations were barely edible by human standards, and vice versa. Elias, on patrol with a Zoraks named Kor, found himself grumbling about the unfamiliar rhythm. "You guys really need to lighten up." Ever heard of a joke? Kor's mandibles twitched, an attempt at a smile. "Your species finds humor in strange places." Elias chuckled. "Yeah, well, it keeps us alive." Kor tilted his head, as if considering the idea. "Perhaps there is wisdom in that." An unexpected threat. Just as the uneasy alliance began to stabilize, new trouble arrived. Patrols reported strange sightings in the forest, marks on the trees too precise to be from the Growltech, and tracks that didn't match any known species. One evening, Lena gathered with her officers and Varys in the command tent to discuss the reports. The tension was palpable. "Something else is out there," Elias said, spreading the latest patrol logs across the table. "Something smart. This wasn't random." Varys leaned over the maps, her eyes narrowing. "The Growltech do not leave such marks. This is the work of hunters." Lena frowned. "Hunters? You mean more Zoraks?" "No," Varys growled. "Worse. Mercenaries. They prey on both our kinds, and they follow the migration paths of the Growltech, using the chaos to strike." Lena's blood ran cold. "You think they're coming here?" Varys met her gaze, the weight of grim certainty in her eyes. "They are already here, watching, waiting, preparing for the storm." The outpost erupted into a frenzy of activity as both sides scrambled to prepare for the new threat. Defensive positions were reinforced, patrols doubled, and every soldier, human and Zoraks, was put on high alert. Elias and Kor stood watch on the northern perimeter, scanning the dark forest with night vision goggles. "I don't like this," Elias muttered. "Feels like we're being hunted." Kor nodded silently. "We are." Back at the command tent, Lena and Varys finalized their plans. They would not wait to be ambushed. They would strike first. A joint task force would scout the forest and flush out the mercenaries before they could attack. "This mission will be dangerous," Lena warned her team. "But if we don't act now, they'll tear us apart from the shadows." Varys slammed her fist on the table. "Then we fight together, human. And we survive together, or die together." Lena gave a grim smile. "Let's make sure it's the first option." Into the shadows. Night had fallen when the joint task force slipped silently into the forest, moving like ghosts through the undergrowth. The air was thick with tension, the only sounds the crunch of leaves underfoot and the faint hum of alien tech. Lena led the human squad, her senses sharpened by adrenaline, while Varys guided the Zorax warriors with the precision of a seasoned hunter. Every soldier knew the stakes. This mission would decide the survival of the outpost. The first signs. After hours of careful movement, Kor raised a hand, signaling the group to halt. He knelt beside a patch of disturbed earth, his claws gently brushing a faint, unnatural track. "Mercenaries," he whispered. "They passed through recently." Elias crouched next to him, adjusting his rifle. "How recently are we talking?" Kor's mandibles clicked in frustration. "Close. They are watching us." Lena scanned the treetops and underbrush, her heart pounding. She knew the mercenaries had the advantage. They were experts in stealth and ambush. They could be anywhere. "We keep moving," Varys growled quietly. "If we wait, they will pick us apart." Lena gave a curt nod, signaling her team forward. There was no room for hesitation now. Ambush in the dark. The attack came without warning. A sharp whistle cut through the night air, followed by a burst of energy bolts from the trees. The forest erupted into chaos as the task force scrambled for cover, firing blindly into the darkness. Lena dove behind a fallen log, adrenaline surging through her veins. "Stay together," she shouted, returning fire. A shadow moved at the edge of her vision, too fast to track. Before she could react, a mercenary leaped from the foliage, a sleek, reptilian figure armed with plasma knives. It lunged at Lena, but Varys intercepted the blow, tackling the mercenary to the ground. The two warriors wrestled in the mud, claws and blades flashing. In a brutal display of strength, Varys overpowered her opponent, snapping the mercenary's neck with a sickening crunch. Lena scrambled to her feet, panting. "Thanks." Varys gave a curt nod, her eyes gleaming with battle lust. "Do not fall behind, human." A deadly discovery. As the team regrouped and pushed deeper into the forest, they stumbled upon a clearing. And what they saw made Lena's blood run cold. A makeshift camp, filled with captured Zorax and human prisoners. Shackled and beaten, the captives were huddled together, guarded by several mercenaries. Among them was a familiar face, Captain Juno, a human officer believed to have been killed in a previous Growltech attack. Lena's jaw tightened. The mercenaries hadn't just come to hunt. They were trafficking survivors. Elias cursed under his breath. "These scum have been selling us off." Varys snarled, her claws flexing. "This dishonor will not stand." Lena's mind raced. They had to act fast. The captives were too weak to survive much longer. And more mercenaries could arrive at any moment. A plan of attack. Lena knelt with Varys behind a thicket, sketching a quick plan in the dirt. "We hit them hard and fast. No mercy." Varys grinned, baring her sharp teeth. "Agreed. We take them by surprise." Elias and Kor prepared the teams for a two-pronged assault. The Zorax would storm the front, drawing the mercenaries' attention, while Lena and her squad would circle around to free the prisoners. "Stick to the plan," Lena whispered. "We get them out, and we get out alive. No heroics." Kor gave a rare smile. "Heroes die. Survivors fight another day." The assault. The Zorax warriors charged first, bursting from the underbrush with terrifying roars. Plasma fire erupted from both sides as the mercenaries scrambled to respond, caught off guard by the ferocity of the attack. Lena led her team through the chaos, weaving between trees and tents until they reached the prisoners. She knelt beside Captain Juno, who looked up at her with hollow, tired eyes. "Lena," Juno rasped. I thought you were dead." "Not yet," Lena said with a grim smile, cutting his bonds. "Let's keep it that way." The sound of gunfire and roars echoed around them. As the battle raged, Varys fought like a demon, tearing through mercenaries with savage precision, while Elias provided cover fire for the retreating prisoners. But just as they reached the edge of the forest, a new threat emerged. A mercenary captain, armored in advanced combat gear, blocked their path. The final confrontation. The mercenary captain aimed a high-powered rifle at the fleeing group, his voice cold and mechanical through his helmet. Going somewhere. Lena stepped forward, her pulse steady. We're leaving. And you're not stopping us. The captain chuckled, a hollow sound. You think this is over? You have no idea what you're up against. Before Lena could respond, Varys launched herself at the captain with a furious roar. They collided in a blur of movement, the clash of claws and metal ringing through the night. The fight was brutal. The captain was stronger, but Varys fought with the fury of someone with everything to lose. Lena raised her rifle, ready to take the shot, but Varys roared, "No, he's mine." With a final, savage strike, Varys ripped the captain's helmet off and plunged her claws into his chest, ending the fight. A new understanding. As the surviving mercenaries scattered into the night, the Joint Task Force gathered the prisoners and made their way back to the outpost. The journey was long and difficult, but they had won a hard-fought victory, together. Back at camp, Lena stood beside Varys, watching the wounded being treated. "You fought well," Lena said quietly. Varys inclined her head. "As did you, human." There was a brief, respectful silence between them, a moment of understanding. They had started as enemies, become reluctant allies, and now stood on the brink of something more. "Maybe we don't have to hate each other after all," Lena said, half smiling. Varys gave a rare, genuine grin. "Perhaps not." The final trial. The mood in the outpost was cautiously optimistic. The prisoners were safe, and for the first time, humans and Zorax worked together without reservation. But peace is a fragile thing, more fragile than anyone realized. It began with a garbled distress signal, picked up by the outpost's long-range scanners. Elias ran a quick analysis, but the message was barely comprehensible. One phrase, however, stood out. "The Graltech. They're coming. Send help, before it's too late." A hidden threat. Lena and Varys stood side by side in the command room, reviewing the signal with grim expressions. "We were fools to think the mercenaries were the real threat," Lena muttered. "The Graltech must have been planning this all along." Varys crossed her arms, her claws clicking softly. "They wanted us distracted. Now we are vulnerable." Kor, standing nearby, studied the data with growing concern. "This message, it's not just from a single ship, it's from one of our deep space listening posts. The Graltech could already be on their way. And if they strike, they'll hit us hard before we have time to prepare," Elias finished grimly. Varys slammed her fist onto the console. "We must act now. This alliance will mean nothing if the outpost falls." Lena took a deep breath, steadying herself. They had no time to argue or second-guess. "We need to buy time," Lena said. "We'll intercept them before they reach the outpost. A strike team, just like before." Varys narrowed her eyes. "We will fight together, side by side." The enemy revealed. The task force scrambled to ready their ships, moving with precision and urgency. As the vessels streaked into the darkness of space, tension filled the air. They were outnumbered and outgunned, but that had never stopped them before. After hours of silence, the first Graltech ships appeared on their scanners. They weren't just scouts. They were warships, bristling with weapons and escorted by fighter squadrons. Elias whistled low. "That's more than I hoped we wouldn't see." Kor growled deep in his throat. "The Graltech bring this many ships only when they plan to leave nothing alive." Lena set her jaw. "Then let's make sure they fail." An unlikely strategy. Varys leaned over the tactical display, her sharp gaze analyzing the enemy formation. "They are arrogant. Their flank is exposed." Lena grinned. "Think we can take advantage of that?" "With you humans?" Varys bared her teeth in a grin of her own. "It will be a glorious disaster." The plan was daring. Elias and Kor would disable the Graltech's flagship shields, while Lena and Varys led a boarding party to sabotage their weapons from within. If they succeeded, they could turn the tide of the battle. Glorious disaster, Elias muttered. Sounds like every plan we've ever had. Boarding the beast, Lena's team launched from their shuttle, magnetized boots locking them onto the enemy hull. Plasma bolts streaked through the void as fighters engaged in brutal dogfights around them. With precision and speed, the team breached the flagship's airlock. Inside, the corridors were dimly lit and eerily silent, a stark contrast to the chaos outside. Varys sniffed the air, her claws flexing. They know we are here. Lena raised her rifle. Good. Let's give them something to regret. Sabotage and betrayal. The team fought their way through the flagship, cutting down Growltech soldiers in close quarters. But as they reached the weapons control room, they found something unexpected. A second mercenary faction, hired to assist the Growltech. Lena cursed under her breath. They had backup waiting for us. Before she could react, the mercenary leader, a heavily scared figure, stepped forward, his rifle trained on them. Nice try, heroes, he sneered. But this time you lose. A hard decision. With the enemy closing in from all sides, Lena realized they had only one option left. They had to destroy the ship from the inside, even if it meant sacrificing themselves. There's no time, Lena whispered to Varys. We detonate the core, or none of us get out alive. Varys's eyes narrowed. You mean none of us? Lena nodded, her heart heavy. This was always a one-way trip. For a moment, the Zorax warrior said nothing. Then she placed a clawed hand on Lena's shoulder, her gaze fierce. If we die fighting. Together. The final countdown. Elias and Kor managed to break through the Growltech defenses just long enough to transmit a signal to the outpost, a warning to evacuate and prepare for an enemy onslaught. Meanwhile, Lena and Varys fought their way to the reactor core, setting the explosives with grim determination. The countdown began. 5 minutes to detonation. We need to go. Lena shouted over the alarms. Varys grabbed her by the arm. There is no escape for us. But the others. Lena cut her off. They know, and they'll survive. They exchanged a brief, fierce glance, a moment of unspoken respect, friendship, and perhaps something more. Then they turned back to the enemy, ready to face their end with honor. The explosion. At the last second, Elias's voice crackled over their comms. Lena, you're not dying today. A rescue shuttle burst through the ship's hull, its airlock doors wide open. Elias was at the controls, grinning wildly. Get in. Lena and Varys sprinted toward the shuttle, dodging gunfire as the reactor core began to glow with dangerous intensity. They leaped into the airlock just as the countdown reached 0. The Growltech flagship erupted in a massive explosion, a shockwave tearing through space. The shuttle barely escaped, the blast rocking it violently, but they were alive. The aftermath. Back at the outpost, celebrations erupted as word spread of the Growltech defeat. Against all odds, the joint task force had survived, and won. Lena stood beside Varys, watching the stars from the outpost's command tower. We made it, Lena whispered. Varys gave a satisfied growl. And we will make it again. They stood in silence for a moment, side by side. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they knew they could face them together.